Mustache Tales.
Yeah!
I'm not sure what year this was, but I got a call from my television agent, and he said there is a new show on HBO. It's called Entourage, and it's about some guys trying to make it in show business. And they moved to LA, and they're like, they want to meet you to talk about maybe directing an episode. And I was on Sunset Boulevard at the time. I remember that. And I'm like, all right, send it over. So they send over the script, I believe, for the pilot first. And then they sent the pilot. And I watched the pilot, and I was so up my own ass that I was like, because I was going through a smaller version of it myself. I went to Sundance. I saw the movie. I had a different track, and I'm like, this is not quite exactly what it really is like. That's what I said to my agent, and he goes, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah, it's not. It's just they haven't quite nailed it in my view." And he goes, "But you're gonna go take the meeting, right?" I'm like, "All right, sure." So I go in and I meet. It's Doug Allen, right? And is it Rob Weitz?
Steve Levinson was probably
Steve Levinson,
there.
yeah.
Right.
And I go over, I believe, to HBO, and I walk in, and I couldn't have been. I mean, and I couldn't have been kind of ruder. I was just like, look, guys, let me tell you something. I said, I saw the movie at Sun. It's not really like, and I go through the whole fucking thing, and for the first and probably only time in my life, I am just fucking dead honest about my opinion about this not being quite right. And they're looking at me like, the fuck is going on here? What kind of fucking interview for a job is this? And I leave it, and I was like, my agent calls me, he goes, how'd it go? I'm like, probably not good. And he goes, yeah, they didn't offer it to you. I'm like, okay, whatever. I don't care. It's not going to last. And then I keep hearing about the show from everybody in fucking town. And I'm like, no. I saw it. It's not, no. And so then I watch one, and I'm like, yeah, okay. And then I watch a second one. I'm like, oh, yeah. And then I watch a third one. I'm like, oh, yeah. And then it becomes my favorite show on television. And I am now obsessed with the fucking show. And then I keep meeting people from the show Entourage, like Kevin and Emmanuel Shrieky. And I'm like, can you tell those guys that I was an asshole and dead wrong, and that they shouldn't hire me as punishment, but just tell them I'm the biggest fucking fan of their show. And it taught me this lesson, which is pilots are incredibly hard. And and they get and the truth is, I've rewatched the pilot. I'm like, that's actually pretty right. You get close, but if as you went through 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, the show can really take off. Like the Arrested Development pilot, I didn't love it. I was a little friendlier about it, but eventually it became this incredible show, and so it taught me the lesson, which is, settle down, motherfucker, settle down.
Well, Jay, I got to be honest. I heard that story like right after it happened, like day of, or whenever the meeting was. And yeah, that was a story that made the rounds for sure, internally. And
I feel like it could have gone either way, though. Couldn't it have been an attractive quality?
Well, we were talking about it weeks later, and maybe when the story would come up periodically after that. But Jay, to your point, I agree. I mean, the hardest thing is always the pilot, because you're going, who are these people? It's the pilot is always going to be, I guess, a little bit, for example, in the pilot, one of the famous, are we allowed to curse on this podcast? If I'm quoting a line? Sure. Okay. So, Piven, me and Piven, E and Ari are at Koi. And Ari says, ask me who I'm fucking. And I'm like, I don't know, Mrs. Ari. And he's names like some Russian model, right? And as it turns out, Ari was like more of a family man that didn't cheat on his wife and was really, but in the pilot, we were still trying to figure out who everybody was. So, pilots are always tricky, man. It's rarely, maybe The Sopranos is something that I would say, or The Walking Dead. There's a handful, but usually the pilot is the worst episode.
It usually is. It usually
Right.
is.
I describe it like if I was having dinner with you guys and I'm like, you got to meet my friend Phil. You'll love Phil, and you kind of get him teed up. But the first time you meet Phil, you're not going to like him because you don't know where he's coming from. You don't know his point of view. You don't know what he's thinking. You don't know his idiosyncrasies. But, the 9th or 10th time you hang out with Phil, you're like, that's such a Phil thing. He
Total
smells his
full
fingers
on
like
Phil.
that. That's hilarious.
It's a total Philism. It's a total Philism.
But it takes a while to get hip to that stuff and what you're trying to do with the show. I mean, especially now I feel like there's such a shorter leash on programming that if it's not working, or at least, when there was network shows, if it weren't working in like 7 or 8 episodes, people got scared.
But that show did start working quickly.
That show did. I'm talking about the ones I've done, Jay.
Well, I'm saying, but I've done network multi-cameras that were, in the genre as good as they were going to be. Right. And you're on that cusp, but come episode 3 or 4, if there's any kind of a dip between episode 2 and 3, they'll yank you right off the air. One of the benefits to HBO was you knew that they were going to give you a season. And in fact, like the quiet line was HBO usually gives comedies at least a second season. So obviously that landscape has changed. It's much different than network TV. But in those days, also like big movie stars weren't doing TV. Right. It was still a little bit like, I'm not doing a TV show. And now, when you look at how that's changed.
Yeah.
Well, think now to have something even set up or sold, you have to pretty much have almost the entire series mapped out.
And packaged.
And packaged.
As much as you can bring to the table, right?
It was an idea. Here are, the 5 characters, and here's what the first story's about. You could maybe run from there and find it as you go. And now it's a novel you got to come in with.
They want that David Simon Bible.
Oh, is that what he did? He created like a big, huge.
Oh, I believe that David Simon, when he did The Wire, came in with a Bible that is legendary at HBO. And, when they handed the Bible to Doug was like, guys, forget, it's literally not possible. I could never, ever, ever do this. It was the whole show beat for beat.
Wow. Incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just sold a golf television show to Amazon, and it's about a public golf course. And we did a sizzle reel, and we sort of told a little bit of the story. And now, I guess I don't know. I mean, I'm outlining it. Is that against the WGA? It probably is. But
I mean, is it to be sitting in your house? I mean,
quietly, I'm not turning anything in. Right. I'm not turning anything in. But I'm like, I'm going over the thing we pitched, and I'm like, yeah, we're not doing that. I mean, we're going to do a little different than that. We're going to make it actually a little cooler and a little more specific and a little more detailed. But you pitch these sort of bright line kind of ideas, and then they buy it, and you're like, okay, yeah, but come on, we all know we're never going to do that.
Right.
And then you got to ride the horse in the direction it's going once you start getting in there, right? Like some tertiary character could become really fun to stick with.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know. It's fun. It's exciting. We're lucky to be in this business.
Not right now, but
you mentioned the strike, Jay. What do you think? Kev, you got thoughts on what's going on in the strikes that are pending? And do you have any optimism or pessimism?
I don't know that it's optimistic. I think it was necessary and was going to happen eventually, right? The timing of it, just coming off of the pandemic and everything. Obviously, it's not good timing, but I just think it was a matter of time before, the streamers. I don't know that AI is that big of a problem yet. I could be wrong, but it will be. Right. So figure while they're striking now, let's just get out and address all the issues so that AI isn't a problem down the road. Because I'm working in the space a little bit, and it's pretty disturbing, dude.
Have you played around with it?
Yeah. Well, because we do the Victory podcast with me, Doug Ellen, and Kevin Dillon, and Veritone AI cloned our voices. So we can essentially launch the podcast in 10 languages in one day. Yeah.
It could do your voices speaking other languages?
You name it. And not only that, it could be regional. right? So, my wife is Colombian, and I sent her the clip of me and speaking Spanish, and she said my jaw is on the. I cannot believe what I just heard. And then she called me. She said, "You're a Spaniard." I was like, "What does that mean?" I don't know. I didn't mean. She's like, "From Spain." I was like, "How do you know where we're from?" She said, "Kevin, it's a Spanish dialect." I'm like, "You don't." So I was like,
Wow.
"Oh," and so I called the AI company. I was like, "They said, yeah, we don't. We just randomly chose that, but we can do regional. We can do any region. You can do, sort of. You want us to change you to a Colombian?" And I was like, "Well, maybe, since my wife and my daughter is half Colombian." But I mean, I'm talking about, our editor is French, and he's trying to edit the Spanish. He's just kind of limping through it, and he said, "Man, I wish this would be a lot easier for me in French." So I called the AI company, and I'm like, "What's the turnaround on it on French?" And she's like, "They said 30 hours. We could do it. And then once you do it, so currently we're 3 different languages. We're German, French, and Spanish, but you can do, Mandarin, and you can do any language under the sun. It's pretty
And that's
wild.
all done in post production. Like you record the stuff live, and then it runs it through a translator.
We had to give them 3 hours of clean audio, which might sound easy, but it's not. We were like, to try to get Kevin Dillon in front of a microphone to talk to get 3 hours of him clean we got lucky. We caught him on a press junket. We recorded this audio where it was just him in the room. So it was a lot of work. And then the computer has to learn your voice, and then it can just spit it out in any language it wants.
And what do you say clean audio? Like, what does he have to say, like specific words that are built that they can create other words out of?
They are looking for words, but what they just need is a ton of information, as much as you can give them. And then the machine starts to learn, which is, I think, the thing that scares everybody about AI, right? So it's now what we've fed into the machine. It's now learning from that. The more we put in, it just learns. So it's pretty crazy.
And so why, I mean, I think I know, but why those countries? Why those languages?
Well, this is what I said to them. I said, guys, if I know initially it feels like the no-brainer is to translate it to Spanish, but what you guys should really do is look what countries and territories Entourage was the biggest in, and you might be surprised.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, who knows? So we're kind of really trying to do the research to figure out where we would want to try to, it's crazy, sell ads, I guess. But if there's an audience there and people are listening to it, then why not try to monetize on it?
That's incredible.
It's incredible. Yeah. The translation thing is incredible. Its ability to generate new stuff too. I mean, you could type in, give me a scene with these characters doing this from this show. And if the show has a known tone, it can already do this, replicate it. I was playing around with it the other day. I said, write a scene between a Vietnam veteran and a lost cat. And it gave me a 3-page scene, a beginning, middle, and end in dialogue with action descriptions of what happened. So if you can do it in the tone of a show or even a language,
how about
I think
this?
It's an important strike.
I could type into chat GPT or whatever it is, write me a 5-minute opening for Victory the podcast with the 3 of us. And then I could take that transcript and do a podcast without anybody walking into the room. I could then create Doug, Dylan's, and my voice. And we could air a podcast from ChatGPT without ever turning on a microphone. It's just nuts.
Yeah.
I'm playing around with that one. It's like a little bit frightening. Oh, but here was my last point. So this company, which is Veritone AI, we started working with them probably 5 or 6 months ago, and just in the last 6 months, it's different. Like the technology is that much better 6 months later. So in a year from now, who knows?
Yeah, we wrote a script. Broken Lizard wrote a script for Warner Brothers, which was intended to be for Will Ferrell, where he plays the head of a tech company. This was in 2000, I think. When did we make Dukes? 2005. Yeah, it's something like 2005, 2006. And the premise of the the genius invention that he came up with initially was he was going to put internet all over the world. Like that was his thing. And we were like, that's not possible. Because we were trying to think of something incredible. And they were like, you know what? Let's make it where you speak in English and it comes out in Spanish through a little machine. And we're like, well, that's not possible. And then here we are. That script is dead now, obviously.
Oh, and that's the other thing. It's already here, right? So it's not like, wow, where is this going? It's here now. It's happening now. So it's pretty wild. So it's something that's got to be put in check.
When I asked Chat GPT what the main issues of the strike were, it did not reference itself as a potential issue.
Right.
So
Interesting.
There's these safeguards in there.
Well, see, that's good. Well, it's smart enough to know not to
rat on itself.
Right, exactly. That's funny.
How's the golf game, Kevin?
The golf game is, listen, everybody that lives in terrible weather is going to hate us, but the weather hasn't been great here in LA. And Jay, you and I play on a mountain course, and when the weather's bad there, I went out one time and I was like up to my knees and in mud. They're like, oh, you got to skip this hole. I'm like, we're skipping holes, like, so it's really it just wasn't worth it. So I came back, but I got to we went out to the Derek Jeter Invitational in the Bahamas last weekend, and it was amazing. Me and Jerry and Kevin Dillon went and played, and it was unreal. That was golf. But it was incredible. But I still stick.
He's got a charity thing that he does there.
Oh yeah, he's been doing it for years. But he usually does it in Tampa, and then they moved to Vegas, and this year they did it in the Bahamas. So I think everybody lined up to jump on that one. But it was great. It was great. So I to answer your question, I've been once again bitten by the golf bug. So I'm out there still hacking it up.
Because you and I were playing quite a bit, and then you're like, I'm about to have a kid. And then you had the kid, and then it was like you just poof, thin air. Like I never saw you again.
that happens. That does happen, listen, I like to, I have my mornings, and it's like either golf or, we go out on a walk most mornings, my daughter and I. So, these are good years. There'll be hopefully plenty of time to play golf, but just trying to spend as much time with my family as possible.
I think your instincts are right on, Kev. These beings, when they come into the world, are vulnerable. You need to take care of them and be there.
It's got to be there.
You
right?
got to be there, don't.
She's talking, and we're talking to each other. We don't know what we're saying. Nobody knows what anybody's talking about.
Yeah.
But the lines of communication are definitely open. So.
My buddy was saying like 18. I love playing golf. 18 holes is a lot, though, right? When you've got other stuff to do, like 12, 9, perfect. 18, I mean.
I'll go out there super early in the morning, and then after the 9th hole, like I just can feel my phone like doing weird things in the golf bag. I'm like, I probably should dip out of here, But 18 holes is a long time.
My problem is I've been starting at 4 and I play 9, and I'm like, I'm just gonna snack on 10 and just I'll get one more in, and then it's I'm rolling up 18 and it's dark. Right. And the cart guy's like, really again?
Right. No, yeah, but that's mainly it's 9 holes, and it's harder to get good at golf because golf is an 18-hole sport, and that's part of it. So you got to try to play 18 once in a while.
Are you having strong opinions on the Live Tour and the way? So Koepka wins, he dips back into a major, and it feels like everyone's forgotten that this was this huge controversy, and all the golfers, there was a schism in the golf world, and then the guy comes back and it feels like old days, and they're all congratulating each other again, even though it's
when you're talking about that kind of money, you're talking about generational altering money, right? And for some of these guys, if they felt that it was worth that, and let's face it, you're still allowed to play in the big ones.
I know.
Who cares? I mean, it's almost, again, I'm also not a golf purist. I didn't start playing golf till COVID, so I can understand how the purists could have a problem with it. But to me, it's like, I don't know, they offered that guy how much? Okay, who could blame him,
I know, but I think about
You're a
it
purist.
in terms of other sports too. But I'm American.
Right. Oh, yeah, there's that aspect of it too. Yeah, I hear you.
Like, we got a nice stranglehold on this sport here where we're the official everything in it. It's a global sport, and I think about how it could affect other leagues. Like, you could cherry pick NHL players, NBA players, pay them a bunch of money, guaranteed.
Well, they can do that anyway. You know, the KHL could call Connor McDavid and say, we're going to give you $1 billion to come play in the
Right.
league. I mean, they could.
Yeah, that's where. But then the players' unions and issues like that should keep
Right.
these guys in the box. I feel. And actually, I wanted to. This is a little segue into a documentary you made a couple of years ago, Big Shot, which
Yeah.
Jay and I both grew up in Chicago in similar eras. We had the Bulls run, we had the Bears, we had some great kind of generational defining teams. And I wanted to ask you about, why you made that documentary, because you were there during that incredible Islanders dynasty.
Right.
And I guess the story, if you talk about John Spano and what the story is, and maybe because it was after that dynasty where Spano came in. So when I saw it a while ago, I thought this could be a revenge piece that Kevin's trying to,
Well, the way it came about was first of all, yeah, I mean, as Chicago fans, you guys could appreciate it. There's this monster run, right? And, Long Island is always going to be, I'll get crucified for saying this, but the little brother of New York City, right? So for the Islanders to reign supreme like that for so long, it was a special time for people on Long Island. And then when the wheels came off, my goodness, you never saw wheels come off like this in an organization. They just fell apart, Yeah. And here comes this guy who wants to buy the team, and he runs in the right circles. He's friends with all the right people. But here's a guy who's got, a couple $100,000 in the bank, walks into Fleet Bank of Boston and takes out an $80 million loan with a fake fax in 1996 or whatever this was. Purchases the team, fires the coach. He's trading guys. He's flying around on the team plane. For 4 months, he's got this going. And finally, somebody turns around and says, excuse me, who are you? Who is this guy? And then they started looking at him, and he was missing payments. And the story just went from ridiculous to more ridiculous. He had to make a payment of, $17 million, and he sent it for $1,700. And then called his accountant a moron, my accountant's a moron. I'll get the rest of that 16 million to you. So, but one of the ironic things is that the team was in such bad shape, and this guy renegotiated the cable deal,
right,
which essentially kept the team on Long Island. So while he was doing all those things, he accidentally did something that's kept the team on Long Island. But when
you guys were vulnerable, you would have lost that team. I mean, the stadium's leaking. It was in bad shape. They were ready to go. Yeah.
At
a time when Long Island was differentiating itself from New York, right? I thought that was trying to be, you're your own place, and that's the one thing that's happening. It's your own thing, and then it almost went away. So he ended up being a savior.
I mean, he's not a savior, but yes, I hear
that
what you're saying.
Cable deal.
The cable deals did sort of save it, but when the movie came out, his boss for his job that he had, because he'd gone to jail for like 7 or 8 years or something, and when the movie came out, his boss is like watching, ESPN, watches the movie, and he goes, you know what? Let me just double check this, and he goes back and he starts looking at his books. And he realizes that Spano's been stealing from his new employer. And when he went before the judge said, you know what, enough for you, and gave him 10 years. So he's still currently in jail because of the movie, which obviously wasn't my intention.
You sat down with him face to face and interviewed.
I got him down, and it pissed people off because nobody could get him for years. They wouldn't talk, but I had to this guy ran me through the ringer. I basically had to date this guy for 3 months to finally get him on camera.
Because he thinks it's going to be a hit piece, but you're just I said to him,
I said to him, listen, bro, let me explain this to you. I already got paid. I'm making this movie. I'm going to give you a chance to tell your side of the story. And if you are accountable and you poke fun at yourself and you don't take yourself so seriously and you stop lying through your teeth about everything, I promise you they're going to love you. And they did. He said when he went back to his hometown after the movie came out, he went to his fraternity reunion, and he said he got a standing ovation. He said it was the best feeling I've had in 25 years. Like all of his college buddies loved it, But yeah, he was just well. The funny story is, do you know who Nick Santoro is? Nick Santoro, the writer, showrunner. I mean, he's huge. He's done a bunch of stuff, but he was the director of the movie. And he had called me about being the narrator. And I was like, absolutely, 100%, I'm in. And then when he found out that ESPN didn't indemnify, he quit the movie. And then I slipped into the directing spot because
So
I was
you
like,
took it
fuck it,
over.
they could sue me. I don't know. What's he gonna do? You know? So, because the minute he sits down and starts talking and signs the waiver, any threat of a lawsuit is obviously gone. But yeah, ESPN does not indemnify. Like, yo, if you get in legal trouble with this guy, don't talk to us. You know? So
Wow.
that scared off the director. Yeah.
He got in a lot of legal trouble because when he got caught, he got busted. He gave the team back. He did
Right.
like a mea culpa, and instead of holding on and putting it into bankruptcy, and maybe he could have fished his way out of it and gotten some funding or something. He just was
came
like,
up. He
tried to walk away.
I think he had like
Never
30.
happened.
I think he had 30 days to raise $5 million. And if he would have gotten that $5 million in 30 days, he would have owned the team outright, and there would have been nothing that anybody could have done about it. Now, granted, the players could have went on strike. Who knows what could have happened, but it would have been officially his team, which is crazy.
Yeah, the story is incredible, especially when we think of all the fraud, the pyramid schemes we're in these days of following
Fire
all those stories.
Festival and
Yeah, the Epsteins and the different hedge fund stuff that goes on. And this guy was like an OG, but he did it with a sports team.
He changed the landscape for the vetting process for every sport. Of course, it happens in hockey. It's like, I know you're a hockey guy. Hockey's my favorite sport. So of course it happens in hockey, but then it changed the way they did it for everybody. Everybody had to step back and go, okay, sheesh. Lucky that happened to the hockey guys, but that can't happen in the NFL or the NBA or in the MLB.
What was Bruce McNall's deal with the Kings too? Wasn't there a similar?
The thing was, Bruce McNall was really rich though, right? He really had the money.
Yeah.
The thing about Big Shot was this guy, convinced people that he had it, and he didn't. Bruce McNall just got caught up in some other weird thing, but he actually had money behind him, and I think that's the biggest difference.
Did this guy ever call you when he was going back to jail and tell you, hey?
Oh yeah, no, he wanted me to pay for his lawyer. Wanted me to pay for his lawyer. I said, what? Or his appeal. And I was like, what do you think? And he said, 30,000. I said, John, are you out of your fucking mind? You're extorting retirement homes for their linen bills. That's what it was, by the way. Like retirement, you're ripping off like old people, like retirement homes. You should be ashamed of yourself. And no, I'm not paying, because you're going to lose the appeal. And you're going to lose the appeal. You have no shot at the appeal. Therefore, I will not be helping you with your legal. Like, it's just so crazy. But I did think about, him being in prison. And this is, I don't even know if I could do this, but talk about a great podcast. If I could fill up the old canteen and do some prison interviews and we do a podcast, what else is he doing? Right. I did. I reached out to a couple of his buddies. I'm like, look, I'm sure he hates me, but just throw that out there and see if he bites. And if he does, call me. So I don't know.
Yeah, where is he at now? No, and a little nugget too. Jay and I have been interviewing a bunch of people that we've known since we were kids on this, just bringing up old friends and stuff. And it's amazing how formative those relationships are. They just happen to you at a young age and then end up coming back around.
Right.
But in John Spano's case, he played on the same high school football team as Urban Meyer.
Right. Yeah. Urban Meyer, not available for interviews. Oh, I tried to get him. And, we flew him out to New York. He's from Cleveland, Ashtabula, Ohio. We flew him out for the interview, and we literally had like the Frost Nixon moment the night before. The room in the phone in the hotel rang, and I answered it, and it's Spano on the other line, and I knew he had a few in him. He's like, I'm not coming. I can't. I said, John, listen to me very carefully. I was like, I don't know. I thought I was using like the Jedi mind trick. I said, you will be there. You will be there tomorrow. Try getting cold feet, all drunk, 10 o'clock the night before. Oh man, it's pretty wild.
That con man
and
thing.
There we were with the cameras and the sign off form, and it was like, man, this is like so. I'm like, are these cameras rolling anyway to watch him stare? He knows the minute he picks up that pen. You could just hear the relief in the room because he signed the form, signed the waiver, the on-camera waiver.
It's a confession, and he was laughing about
basically
it.
Signed a confession. But I think it was actually a great look for him. If that would have been the end, he could have had a miniature Jordan Belfort resurgence, right? I mean, like
Right.
you look at Jordan Belfort, right? I mean, I guess when Leo and Scorsese play you in a movie, it changes the perception of you. But this guy's out.
Yeah.
Paid, bro.
Getting paid
Crazy.
for tour. Yeah. He's on the lecture circuit now.
Yeah.
I've run into a couple of con men in the independent film finance world. And one of them was like, I mean, they really get you when they're like, yeah, I got about 300 million I'm working with, and I'm trying to do about 20 movies, and you're like, really? I only need 7, and you fall for it. And I went down the road for months with this dude, and finally we had lunch, and he goes, can you? Is there any way you can handle valet? I didn't have, and I'm like, handle valet, and then I
red flag.
Yeah, well, that was it. After 3-4 months of that, I'm like, this is nothing. I mean, what the fuck is going on? So then that went away, and another guy I was introduced to, he had oil wells in Oklahoma or somewhere, and he had $300 or $400 million, and he wanted to get in the movie business. He was a big Super Troopers fan. He called me from one of the oil wells. I could hear some machinery in the background.
Sound design. That was sound design.
It was a total fraud. I mean, a total fucking fraud. He didn't have a goddamn cent. And
he's turning on fake equipment. Turn on the machines. Turn on the machines. I'm
like, why would you do it? And I know they do it because they just want to be close to, celebrity. They want to be close to it. And they're like, maybe I can pull it off. Like once they're like, okay, now I can, and they're running around trying to finance this movie. And my brother-in-law calls me and goes, this guy? And I'm like, and he's in finance. My brother-in-law's in like mortgage, commercial real estate. And he goes, there's a guy out on the street trying to raise money off your movie. I'm like, what? And it's this fucking oil man. And I'm like, oh, boy.
Hey, listen, there are times, because, you're always trying to raise money in some capacity for whatever it's for, right? And recently, a few weeks ago, we had this great meeting with this guy who was going to do all these things. And after the meeting, me and my buddy walk out, and we're like walking. We're saying anything. We're like kind of nodded at each other, and we're getting in the car, and we got in the car, and I said, "Isn't it crazy how if we took this meeting 2 years ago, we would be like stopping for a bottle of Cristal to pop champagne and toast this, and instead we didn't say anything because until that money lands, or until that wire is sent, or until that check lands, or until somebody starts paying, you can't. You're setting yourself up for disappointment."
That's right. Yeah.
And they come so close, whether it's a big securities issue or financing movies, there's just this one moment where you can pull it off. And then it just came up snake eyes. And that's how they get busted on it. The documentary on the Fry Festival was, there's a world where that's the next Coachella, like you don't know.
Listen, and I think that this guy's going to obviously end up paying everybody back. I believe when I watch those festivals, I believe that he really believed that he was going to pull it off. Right now, it doesn't make it right, but I think stay the course. I think he was doing the stay the course. Like it'll work out. This is not going to be the greatest one, but next year will be better. I don't think he set out to rip those people off.
No, he's got to believe it. He's got just like Elon Musk sitting in a room being like, we're going to land a rocket on Mars.
Right.
People are like, okay, he seems pretty convinced by it. Maybe we should all do it.
Yeah, the other thing too, I say about financiers, when people are like, oh, this guy's got so much money, $3 million is nothing to him. And I'm like, stop saying that. $3 million is $3 million. It's a lot of money. And if they have money, then they're smart enough not to just throw $3 million out the window. He's got 100 million. I'm like, well, if you had $100, would you give 3 of it to a complete stranger that you don't know?
Well, that's the house of cards, because $3 million in real cash is the $3 million that's allowing him to make payments on all the other bank loans that he has. So it's
not just as simple as writing the check.
And the Fire Festival, I agree. I watched both those documentaries, and they were both so exciting.
I watched them the same day. I couldn't get enough. So I wanted the third network to take a crack at it, or third streamer.
And to be fair, like when I made my first feature film Puddle Cruiser, my producer was like, we're going to run out of money at the 2.5 week point of 4 weeks. And I'm like, we're going. And so
we'll figure it out. Right?
We reached the 2.5 week point, and he goes, we're out of film. And I'm like, okay, let me get on the phone. And so the fucking morning of that next production day, I'm just like, and I got it fucking done. And I raised another, I don't know, 100, like not 100 grand, like
just enough to keep going, right?
Just enough to keep going. And then we got to the next week, and we finished it. And at the end, I ended up putting $65,000 on credit cards because the credit card company kept sending me these offers that would say Dr. Chandrasekhar. And I'm like, and I'd sign them up and max them out. And then they call me. They're like, you're not a doctor, are you? And I'm like, I'm not. It's a little racist that you thought so.
It's true, though, right? You just assumed I was a doctor. Right.
In any case, we got the film done. So I mean, I sympathize with this Fire Festival guy because I mean, I was like, well, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen. And
he was waiting on a miracle that just didn't happen. But I don't think he set out to do it. But man, they threw the book at him. He did time, bro. He was away and watched. By the way, I would love to go to the new festival. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, he's gonna get it right this time. The story is not over. Watch.
You would get on a plane.
I mean, of course, I can't make it to the golf course. I'm speaking figuratively. I can't go. No, I'm not actually going to the Fire Festival. But there's like my spirit. I'll be there in spirit because I think he pulls off round 2.
I would love to see the next documentary of you stranded at the Fire Festival, storming around like, God, get me out of here.
I have an anxiety attack at Coachella. You're going to put me on an island with, that's, no way, no chance.
It's incredible. You were talking about Spano being in prison and those 2 years that he spent. I know that part of your podcast series, I don't know if you did this as a one-off, but we overlap with, actually all of us know him, with the Ryan Leaf story.
Right.
And his incredible, both fall from grace, but then the way he's rebuilt his life and the stuff that he's done. And so you took that as you made it into like an 8-episode series breaking down his whole story.
Yeah, we did a one-off, but this is, you hear all this talk of like, deals on the golf course. I've not been successful with deals on a golf course. It's not really why I'm there. Maybe I should do it a little bit more, but, Ryan was talking to me, and this was at the height of COVID, and he was kind of pitching the idea. I knew who Ryan was. I like Ryan. He's just an admittedly imperfect human being, and to me, it just makes me laugh. It's like he hits a golf shot and he misses it, and he's like so mad. I'm like, Ryan, it's 6:50, bro. The day it's still dark out. There's no one here. Hit another one. But he always made me laugh. He's always like, he's just so competitive. Like I don't know. I took a liking to him right away when he's pitching it to me, and I was listening, but I'm quite literally standing over a putt, and I said, "What do you want to call it?" And he was like, "Bust," and I was like, Let's go. And I literally, by the way, I use the expression greenlit loosely, but for something like that, I was able to say, dude, let's do it. Give me your lawyer's name. And we were able to did you ever listen to it? You should check it out. It's pretty cool. Well, it's a real,
in some ways I lived it because before Ryan had made a kind of a reemergence into the public eye, I tracked him down and, I sat with him and I went to his Transcend rehab facilities that he's part of. And I just was curious to see where he was at in his life. And this is before he kind of came back and was commenting on college football and having all these different
and Hayes,
that he's doing.
I don't mean to interrupt, but the reason you did this is because you're 6'4" college quarterback, and you were contemplating playing him in the Ryan Leaf story, correct?
Well, yeah. I mean, so Ryan was my guy. Sometimes you come up with athletes at the same time you're playing a sport, and they're doing it maybe under a bigger spotlight. And so, I wanted his face mask. It was the longer cage that went down under the chin. And I was hedging bets at that time. I was putting my money on on Ryan.
As
And
was
then I
I.
hadn't thought of him. I hadn't thought of him in years, 15, 20 years. And I was having like a less than stellar experience in my life. And I just thought, God, what, the parallel story kind of tripped in my head, and I got to know him right when he got together with his wife, and he had his kid, which is one of the best names for a child
MacGyver.
ever, I think. Yeah. It was MacGyver.
I went to MacGyver's birthday party. I took my kid to MacGyver's birthday party. Yeah.
The story I know of how he got the name is that he sits down with his wife and his mom, and his wife likes the name MacGyver, and the mom's like, we can't name it MacGyver. Ryan's caught in this Sophie's Choice, and he's like, we're going to name him MacGyver.
By the way, you should see how
foot.
big this kid is already.
Oh,
because Ryan's wife is a volleyball player. I
Yeah.
mean, this kid is going to be a monster. He's 6'8".
Yeah,
6'9".
I've seen MacGyver when he sits him down on the podcast sometimes and interviews him. It's incredible. But so I went to another great title, Bust being one, but I think the hometown that he grew up in Montana is even a more apt title. It's called Great Falls.
Great Falls.
And when you go there, it's a small town. And I was sitting down, I was talking to his mom, and Jay, you guys all know him. We got to have him on this to get his story
he's a great
again
guest.
through this.
Yeah, he's a great podcast.
But one of the things his mom told me about growing up in a small town, I was like, where does he get this kind of FU energy from? Like, what was it that drove him to be destructive in a lot of ways? And the normal thinking is that he was a bully, right? That's a mentality that comes with a bully. But the way the mom told me, which is only really kind of an empathetic way that a mom would have on their son, is she said the town bullied him because it was a very small place. It was a humble culture, and it was all about head down. And this guy's a superstar, slam dunking a basketball in this tiny gym, like a gym from the movie Hoosiers. And his own high school, Great Falls, is booing him.
Yeah, well, he did the Kobe Bryant airplane. He hook dunked it, and then did the Kobe Bryant airplane move. I mean, he did. You know what? Which I was, and I think honestly, it's more of a competitive thing. So obviously, when he was quarterback in high school, and he would show up at the B team scrimmage and play defensive back and not let anybody catch passes. He said, I'll only play defense. I promise I'll only play defense and I'll play defensive back. And he would just not let a quarterback complete a pass just because he wanted them to know to forget it, that he was the guy for the foreseeable future. But Ryan said, he said, in the town that was this small, when they did the Heisman voting, he finished third he finished last in the poll, in his hometown poll. Right?
Yeah, it's really an odd phenomenon. I think part of it is because he went to Washington State and he didn't stick around in Montana.
Right.
And that was
they turned on him big time.
They turned on him.
And he made mistakes too.
Was brutal.
I'll tell you. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He made mistakes that he just wasn't, you do have to kind of throw your arms open and you have to embrace your hometown. And I think he felt that they've been against him from the beginning. So when he did take off, his initial instinct was to F you and that's it, but he had his moments back there with people,
Well, the other thing that his just timeline of his life timed up with so incredibly is the opioid crisis. Cause it wasn't correct me if I'm wrong, he wasn't using the pills while he was playing. It was after.
Well, the opioids are for acute pain, right? So if you blow out your knee and you take it, it will kind of go there, right? It's when you take it socially. So he said he had always taken painkillers for surgeries. He said it was the first time that he did it socially that it changed the landscape, because he didn't feel, he tells the story, and I don't want to tell the whole thing. So he's got something to tell you guys about. But the HBO fights, how they it's like the trade-off for getting the tickets. They're going to call your name and they're going to put you on camera, and it's like Tiger Woods, and the place goes crazy and going through the whole thing. And they say Ryan Leaf, and he said 18,000 people booed me. I'm sitting there. I didn't do it. He said, and when you're a player, you have armor. You love it. You got the shoulder pads on, you got your helmet. But when I'm sitting there, and he said that night, somebody offered him a Vicodin, and that was it. Yeah. That was it. He also said that what he would do was, and this is what he ended up getting in trouble for, he would go to open houses, right? And he would walk through, and he said 9 out of 10 houses will have pills in them. I said,
Right.
come on, 6 out of 10 houses. 9 out of 10 houses will have something. If they let you go, like, oh, let me check out the bathroom, and you walk in, you start rifling through. He said 9 out of 10 houses would have it, which I found, that could be a crisis. Yeah,
And they were always in the same place, master bathroom in the cabinet.
When I moved out to LA, I was running a little hard. I was doing, a fair bit of ecstasy, and I was hanging out with these really great people. And
Which I would have loved to see, you in a happier mood.
And we were playing a lot of ping pong and just, snorting lines of ecstasy off the ping pong table. It was wonderful. It was a wonderful time. But I would constantly look in my medicine cabinet after I'd have people over, and shit would be just shuffled around. Like somebody was going through it, and I had a sense of who I thought it was. And so I wrote her a note, and I put a little note next to my pharmaceuticals, and I said, Jennifer, no. And I'm like, let's see what happens now. And she walks up, she goes, what the hell is this? And I'm
What's
like,
this supposed to mean?
I'm like, well, you found it. And she goes, it wasn't me. I'm like, you found it. She goes, well, I mean, and she goes, you don't have any ecstasy, do you? And I'm like, see.
Yeah,
I
man,
do have some, Jennifer. I do happen to have some. Okay.
I tore my pectoral muscle, not in a cool way. I was doing a stunt insert, not even a stunt, on a TV show.
An insert.
An insert. Just like, hey, grab onto this pole and spin around. And I tried to Cirque du Soleil it, to really commit. And it just went just like a piece of Velcro. It tore off my shoulder. Ugh. And I ended up having to have surgery to get it reattached. And this was right at the beginning of when we were realizing how these pills were overprescribed and they were out there, and just how they were all over medicine. And the guy who did my surgery gave me, literally at the end of it, a tennis ball can of the Oxycontin pills. And he said, you might want to take these because they're going to be really hard to get soon. And there was this.
They're heavy duty too. Oxycontins are next level. Yeah.
It was a sprint to the finish where they were doling them out, knowing that the stuff was going to start getting regulated more. It was a wild ass. It was essentially the entire nation addicted to heroin at the same time that all the jobs went overseas.
Did you finish the can?
How many got left?
I was really generous with them for a while, but they made me, I like to enjoy a couple cocktails, and there was a certain point where they don't mix well. Like you get really nauseous, you get really sick. So, I chose the lesser of the two evils.
Good idea.
Decided to keep cocktailing and get
I
rid
had
of the
the
pills.
same reaction.
It wasn't my thing.
I would always forget that I took it, and then I'm like, oh, how many drinks can I have now? And I'm like, I just think I like alcohol. I like drinking more than I like that kind of drugging, I think, at the end of the day. And so I just never got, and I was like, nah, it's not for me. Absolutely.
The other thing, Jay, in the days that you're talking about, and I remember those days too, when it was ecstasy, which is different than, I guess, what Molly would be now. Ecstasy was cut with some weird shit, right? If you took some kind of strange ecstasy that you didn't know, you'd be like, oh my God, you're just that kind of, I don't know. It's those drugs can be dirty, man. And how people are doing it today. I saw these kids at a party, right? And it was a holiday party. And I saw them, by the way, blatantly snorting something off of a table. And I was like, wow, these kids aren't shy over here. What are they doing? And I said, what are you doing over there? He said, we're snorting Adderall. And I was like, wow, that's dark. I said, why? And he said, it's safer. And I was like, holy shit, I hadn't really thought about that, right? I mean, if they were going to buy cocaine, who knows where they're getting it from? At least Adderall is from their doctor, and they know what it is that they're putting in their body, however crazy that might sound. Yeah. I was like, oh, wow, it's just I'm glad that those days are behind me.
Me too.
That's for sure.
Me too. It's that's the sometimes those urban myths, and they're true, but they're real deterrents because you don't want to be the one that.
Right. The luck I have, right. I'll be that guy. Exactly.
It's so terrifying.
Should we vouch, Hayes?
Yeah. So, I'll leave you to give the pitch of what the vouch vault is to Kevin.
I checked it out. It's pretty cool. It's
Thanks,
had me
buddy.
thinking a lot. about what that word even means.
Yeah,
you
when
know?
Jay first told me about it, I was like, what is just making a list of stuff? I don't get. And now I'm kind of into it. And
Right.
when I see something, I'm like, oh, cool, I'll share it. And it's like random stuff, you know.
Right.
Well, it's like if you go to like, you know, for those of you who don't know what it is, it's an app. It's like I kind of describe it as Instagram of recommendations, or sort of like a Pinterest kind of thing. And whatever you love, you put into this little app, and you hashtag Sun Valley, Idaho. And so, you know, and so if you're visiting Sun Valley, Idaho, you know all the restaurants I like there, and all the hikes I like there, and all the fishing I like there, and you kind of, and you know it, you believe it because it's from somebody you know. Ideally, I mean, it's best when it's friends who, you know, it's a version of replacing that sort of text chain where it's like, I like this restaurant, I like this sushi in LA, I like this burger in LA, and this one in Chicago, and you kind of go, okay, got it. So on this show, we like to vouch for one thing. You want to go first, Hayes? Are you ready? Or
Yeah, I'll tell you a safe place to get Adderall, guys. That's what I'm going to vouch for.
Vouch for it.
No, we were talking about golf earlier. I got a new driver. Summer's coming up. I've never been into golf technology because I don't think my swing's been dialed in enough to have it make a bit of a difference. But TaylorMade has made a stealth driver. And I guess the way I was sold on it from a friend, he told me, you know, most drivers, the big technology was titanium. It's this, it's that. And this has got a carbon sweet spot.
Yeah,
So it's a different type of metal. And it really helps. And it's super fun to hit. So it's just
All right,
gonna
so you're
be a
vouching for
driver.
the new driver.
I'm vouching for a new golf driver, guys.
I hit that driver, and it felt like my drives went about like 15 to 25 yards longer.
Yeah.
I was
That's a lot.
really, yeah, it is. It is.
And the sound is different too.
Yeah.
When you hit it.
And I don't know why I didn't buy it. I guess I'm a real late adopter of technology. Like I kind of just stick my head in the sand and I'm like, it'll go away. Like I didn't get on Twitter because I felt it was frivolous the name of it was frivolous. And then I saw, you know, I said this before, there are plenty of comics who have done less than I have, who have 1 million followers, and I'm still sitting there at 30,000. And I'm like, oh, I'm such an idiot. And same with AI. I'm like, I'm not doing it. It's going to go away. I'm not going to do it. And I know that's a dumb approach. But this driver, I tried it. I'm like, yeah, it's good, but the carbon probably wears out. Anyway, I'm going to try to stop being such a Luddite. Yeah.
You're not Luddite. You're old school.
I'm old school.
You're old school.
Right, you're saying if you would have jumped on that Twitter bandwagon early, right, when it was happening and it was building, you would have your 800,000 or 1 million followers or whatever it was, right?
Yeah, no doubt. And so
It's true.
I don't know what to say about me. I'm just that way. I'm going to vouch for this. It's a song by this guy Sanford Clark, and the song is "It Ain't Nothing to Me," and it's this one of these. I'm a big outlaw country fan. It's one of these like wonderful song stories. It's about a guy sitting at a bar, and there's a really hot woman sitting with like a tough looking dude at the bar, and the guy who's telling the story is he's watching another guy. As soon as the tough guy gets up and goes to the bathroom, this other guy goes and sits next to this hot woman. And the narrator who's watching it all is like, he's the guy comes kind of moving in and out trying to hit on this woman. And the guy's like, the narrator's like, I would be a little careful about that. I don't think that's you don't want to be hitting on that woman. And the guy who's hitting on the woman goes, it ain't nothing to you. And the guy goes, yeah, you're right. It ain't nothing to me. You're right. And he goes and starts hitting on the woman again. And then the dude comes back from the bathroom and he puts a bullet in the dude and he's laying on the floor. And the narrator's like, yeah, you're right. It ain't nothing to me. And it's just such a classic, wonderful Western tale. And this guy Stanford Clark it's just such a great song.
That's what's so great about those songs. It's hard when I try to get my kids hip to them because they're used to hearing like the hooks and they want the song.
Yeah.
But when you're like, no, you got to listen to they're storytellers. This is
Right.
like a whole 5-minute story. That
Yeah.
song, "Get in the Truck" by Hardy right now. Have you heard that about the guy who he happens upon a woman who's been beat up by her husband on the road and he picks her up and he ends up going to the guy's, going to the house and killing him. And the story takes you all the way through the story, all the way through the ending when he's in jail and the woman comes and visits him in jail and thanks him. It's like a 5-minute song.
Yeah, I mean,
you know?
in a way, it's no different than what Biggie Smalls and Snoop Dogg did in gangster rap. It's the same kind of, guns and sex and stories. They were,
right.
Some of these songs were just, the same thing.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
like,
if you look at the Snoop song Snoop did, "Murder Was the Case."
Yeah.
That was like a story. I mean, they made a music video out of it that was 20 minutes long or something. It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got something to vouch for. I got something I want to vouch for. So there is a documentary on Apple called "Still" by Davis Guggenheim, and it's about Michael J. Fox, and it is so well done. So well done. And if growing up like at my age range, Michael J. Fox was this guy, but he talks, it's such an incredible story to listen to Michael J. Fox tell the story, but from a filmmaking standpoint, you'll love it. They are telling the story and they don't have the archival, so they use shots, sort of ambiguous shots from his movies coming up. So reaction shots, they'll take and they put it all together and it's really, really, really well done. And I highly recommend if you're a Michael J. Fox fan or even a fan of the industry, checking it out.
And
people are like, oh, it's so sad. And it is sad, but it's honest and it's a good film.
And he can't keep his body still anymore. Is that the source of that title?
Yeah. I mean, he breaks bones, it's just, he falls down. It's, but he's still there, and it's worth a watch. I highly recommend it.
I know he's been on the forefront of moving the needle on the treatment of Parkinson's. Is it going to any of that?
Yeah, he talks about it a lot, but he also talks about doing Family Ties during the day, getting picked up by a Warner Brothers Teamster, doing or whoever it is, Universal doing Back to the Future all night, and then them dropping him off back on the set for Family Ties, and he did it for like 3.5 months. And there was one point where Back to the Future was the #1 movie, and Teen Wolf was the #2 movie in the country, and he was on Family Ties, which is the #1 show.
Wow.
And this is like it's just like a 5'6" kid from Canada that kind of moved out and sort of became this mega star. And the way his wife said, there is an element of, of course it's sad. Of course it is, but it's definitely worth watching. You should check it out.
Kevin, you when I told you about this on text a week ago, you mentioned another documentary on Apple.
Chimp Empire. That's Netflix. Have you seen it?
Oh, on Netflix. Chimp Empire. So I went and watched the first one, and wow, I found myself feeling like, look, these they're orangutans, right? Right. I mean,
right. It's the closest living.
Yeah, 98% of the DNA we share, and you can see their fingernails and they communicate and you're like, I felt like emotionally sad because I'm like, are we going to kill all these fucking orangutans? Like, I mean, that's not what the show's about, but you're like, we got to keep their habitat intact. And which, but it's not a sad documentary, but in the opening scene or opening episode, these orangutans are basically super territorial, and the dude orangutans they'll go in a big group and they'll range around the border of their territory. And if any orangutans from the other territory come in, they'll make a decision on whether to attack or retreat. And it's this incredible, I mean, and if somebody goes across the line, they're gonna get beat down, right? And one of the orangutans is like, they go to the border and he's like, I'm just gonna head back on my own, right? And on the way back, they find him. He's been killed by another group of orangutans that secretly snuck in and just wasted this dude. And then they escaped. And you see these women coming over and they're looking at him and everyone's real sad. And you're like, oh, it's so sad. And this poor guy, he's not even a tough guy. He was just going along with the dudes trying to like, yeah, I can do this too. And for some reason, he's like, I'm out of here. It's boring. And he gets killed. And the orangutans they're all kind of thinking about it. And, you can tell they're kind of a little pissed off. And then suddenly they look up one by one, they all looking up, and they're not orangutans up there, but there are these monkeys, right? And they're like, and they just start climbing up these trees, and these monkeys are like trying to get away, and these orangutans, as we found out in the first episode, eat monkey a couple of days a week, and they rip they take monkeys down, they're tearing them apart, and then they get together and they're ripping meat off and sharing and everyone's getting a little piece of monkey meat, and you're like, whoa. I mean, whoa.
Well, it's like they're hunter-gatherers, right? And all they do is hunt, gather, and protect their territory. And you go, there's just nothing else going on, right? They're not, hey, what time's that game start? You know what I mean? Think about all the distractions that we have. And there's something about, I find like watching Chimp Empire, I'm like, wow, this is just the basics. Everybody needs to eat. But Jay, it does go into that where there's the alpha, there's the head guy, right? There's the head, orangutan. Then there's the guy that kind of thinks maybe he should be, but he hasn't made his move yet, right? Yeah. Everybody's got their sort of role. It's crazy how close they are to us.
Yeah. And the way to move up is to make alliances. And the way to make alliances is to groom other men, other apes. You just kind of get all their bugs out and eat them and get all your bugs out. And you become and you see like an orangutan go up to a strong, like the guy who's the challenger goes up to like effectively the enforcer. So there's the A orangutan, the alpha, he's got an enforcer. And then there's the guy who's trying to become the alpha. The guy who's trying to become the alpha goes and hangs out with the enforcer and he's kind of grooming him. And then the enforcer just walks away. He's like, yeah, fuck off. And now he's left alone. And you're like, oh, like it doesn't necessarily work out.
There's a very clear power chain, though. Yeah. You're right. You got the guy who thinks he can be the alpha. It's like, I'll buddy up with. It's like a mob hit. It's like, I'll buddy up with the enforcer. We'll get rid of this guy. We'll take over. Mm-hmm. It's, but it's really, there's something soothing about it. And I thought it would be something interesting to watch with my daughter until they started eating the other ape. And I was like, all right, maybe we'll go back to Bluey.
That's an incredible way to form an alliance. Next time I'm at a cowboy bar, I'm going to try that. If there's a bunch of tough guys around, I'm going to size up the toughest guy in there. And I'm just going to go start fixing his hair and crimping him. And I'm like, yeah, what was
brush a little lint off the shoulder. Hey, buddy, you got something between your teeth. I don't want you walking around like that.
Start shining his cowboy boots and be like, is this working? Are we going to be friends?
But you're right. It does seem like a very, I don't know how you stay entertained. I mean, obviously there are lots of women around and they're clearly having sex and babies and all that.
But there's nothing happening at all.
There's nothing happening.
They're just sitting there waiting
and
for somebody to attack them or to get food. Yeah.
Well, that's why they jerk off so much, right? It's part of just once you get your needs met and you're filling your time.
That might be episode 2. They didn't cover that in one.
Yeah, they really deep dive that towards the close of the season.
You're showing that to your kid, you're like, I'm not really.
Let's go back to Coco Melon. I think it's time
Stick
for Coco
to the Jungle
Melon.
Book, man.
Right.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for being on the show.
This was great. This is great. Thank you guys very much. And I really think this is a good idea, man. This the vouch thing.
It's
pretty cool.
That.
It's like, hey, these are my spots. These are my spots. This is like, I can fill out a whole page. I just got going with one. I got 10, but we'll save it for another time.
Yeah. Well, when you sign up, I'll get you verified. I got that kind of pull.
Oh, I love it. All right. Sounds good. All right, fellas. Have a good one.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
See you guys.
Mustache Tales.